this is our house.
Okay, wait a minute.
And my mother lives on the top floor there. And now the house of Eva Brown, I'm not sure if anybody's living in there today, is this one. And it's completely...
What, deserted?
Yeah, deserted. And I don't know who it belongs to. Apparently he bought it for her.
He bought it for her?
Yes.
But we don't know if he was a regular visit in this house.
Yes, he was. He was.
He used to come here?
Yes,
He used
yes.
to visit
My
her
mother
here?
will tell you about this. He came with his big car and he would visit her. So I have keys.
Is that okay to verge on her like that?
Yeah, I told her to. And she's, you know, my mother, once she gets talking, then she can talk for hours. So, wir sind da.
Hello.
This is my mother, Frau von der Borch. This is
Nice
Professor
to meet you.
Arieli.
Thank you very much. Happy to
And
meet
this is
you.
Eran.
Did you see the Eva Brown's house?
Yes,
Yes,
yes, we
yeah.
went there already.
Yes.
We want to
Okay.
ask you some questions about that period. So, you moved here.
I'm born in 1924, and we moved in this house when I was about 7 years old. My father was a lawyer, and he bought the house, and we moved in here. I had a brother, a younger brother, and an older sister, but my brother was killed during the war with 17 years. He had to go to the army. September 44, he died, just before the end of the war.
Were you his youngest sister?
No,
or
I was in the middle.
You were in the
My
middle.
brother was the youngest, and my sister was older. She was 3 years older.
So that might have been very, very difficult for you during the time of the war to experience everything, but on top of everything.
Yes, it was terrible, because we were in this little house in this little village, my mother and I. And my father had taken his company to another village. And he came to see us and visit us and to tell us about what happened. And he said, well, you know, I was in Munich a few days ago, and there came an SR man, and he said, you know, I have to tell you that your son is dead. He's in the war, and he was in Holland, in the Netherlands, but very short, 4 weeks I think, then he was killed.
4 weeks?
Yes. So, this was the death of my brother. And I remember when the war began, my mother said, well, he's just 12 years old, and the war would end before he has to enter the army. Huh?
Could you tell us a little about the everyday life in this place? Did you like growing up here? Did you like the atmosphere?
I have to tell you that the law in Germany at this time said that every child, boy or girl, has to join the so-called Hitlerjugend. I was a child, a very sportive child. I could ski, I could ride, and I was tall and big, and so of course more or less like a symbol of a German girl. Blonde, blue eyes, long hair. And
Like
I
myself.
liked to be outside the house because my mother was very strict, very strict. And we had to sit and we had to this and that, very strict. And so I always was happy to go out. And so after I joined the Hitlerjugend, I had to go out because once a week we had to meet, and then we had to make Wanderungen.
To hike, to do
Hiking.
Yes, and exercise and so on. So after a few months, I was just enthusiastic about the Hitlerjugend. At this time, I knew who was Eva Brown, because Hitler had built this little house for her, and she moved in there.
When?
Oh, this is, I don't remember.
He built it or bought it?
He built it. He built it.
How old were you then?
This was, well, I don't know. I was maybe 10,
Yeah, yeah.
something like
So
that.
that's
So it was-
1934.
Yeah, it was shortly after Hitler came into power.
34, 35.
Yeah.
huh?
Do you
Something
remember
like-
the first time you saw her?
Yes.
Do you remember the first encounter with her?
Yeah, but it didn't mean anything to me.
She didn't make any impression on you.
No, no. Only there was day and night was a Wache,
Guard.
a guard in
Next to
front
her
of the
house.
house in a little something like a tent.
Wooden kind of thing.
Yes, and we couldn't have visitors from foreign countries, which the Gestapo didn't prove or approve, and we couldn't have employees in our house which the Gestapo didn't had approved. And so, of course, I got the idea who this woman was. Huh?
That you and your friend Elisabeth, when you were children,
Yes.
you called
The
every
taxi.
5 minutes
No,
a
she has
taxi.
to tell it.
Yeah.
No, we
What
told.
did you do?
We were sitting there on the balcony watching, but we had phoned before to the taxi to say, come to the Wasserburger Straße at this time,
Number 12.
number so and so. The ladies want to go to the theater.
Okay.
So then, and we were sitting there on this balcony out
Okay.
watching what happened. There came the taxi, said to the SS guard,
Yeah.
the ladies want to go to the theater. He said, I don't know. I have to ask. And I said, no, we
goes
don't want to
inside.
go to the theater. So the taxi left. 5 minutes later, we had called the next one.
Okay.
Came again, you have to get the ladies to the theater. And then the SS said, they don't want to go to the theater.
What did he say in German? What did he say in German?
In German they said, Herrgott Sakra.
That's Bavarian, that's not German.
Okay.
Niemand, die wollen nicht zum Theater gehen. Die schauen, dass sie weiterkommen. Then 5 minutes later, the third taxi. And then the SS said, well, if you don't go, we call the police, but what is this here? And the taxi said, oh God, no, I go. And we had a good time on our balcony.
The street was supposed to be bombed.
Yeah.
So how come it wasn't? What was the story?
What I think, the street behind us, every single house were bombed.
What is the name of the street?
The Ebersberger Straße, no?
Yeah, yeah.
And all the people were dead. And in this, exactly behind us, there lived a family with three children, and the father, the man, the husband had sent them to the country. But the mother didn't want to stay there, so she came back. And then came the bombs, the house were bombed, and the oldest boy was still alive, and they had taken him to our garden, but in the garden then he died. And I'm sure that the Americans, the Flieger,
The pilots.
Yeah.
had verwechselt
Mistaken
the streets because they want to bomb our street.
So the pilot made a mistake.
Yes,
The American pilot
Yes.
made a mistake.
yes.
Whatever happened to Eva Brown's sister after the war?
She stayed in this house and the Americans took her out. She was pregnant, and what happened then we don't know. But she was still in this house when the Americans came.